Welcome to the Human Frequency on American Freedom Radio, broadcasting live from the giant tree stumps of southern Kern County in the land once known as Lemuria. We've got a great show for you tonight. We'd like to start out with a little bit of news from the past week. I've gotten a lot of emails and calls from people in LA who are very despairing over the geoengineering attack this past week. And I have some good news. The fact that everybody noticed it on the same day shows that most of the time it's gotten a lot better and it's not so bad.
And they don't bother to email you with their complaints on any other day when there's nothing.
So I was happy. I was actually happy because I saw it too. Believe me, we all saw it. Following our gifting trip to Northern California, where we did a talk and distributed a lot of orgonite between San Luis Obispo and the Bay Area, there was a backlash. You know, we had created a beautiful rain. I won't say we did it. The earth created that beautiful rain. We just helped it happen.
The distribution of orgonite allowed it to happen more than it might have without that. So,
yeah, it was a beautiful rain, and it was noticed for sure. And there's some great pictures on my blog you can see of the nice cumulus clouds that happened that day and some very interesting sky phenomena in the last week. And I'm happy to say that this latest geoengineering attack was fully transmuted and moved through, and now we have nice skies again.
Yeah, a lot of people might think that the stuff was falling, but it isn't.
It isn't.
Not here in any rate. So it was quite a transmutation. Mm-hmm. I mean, it just gets stronger each time and they get weaker each time. So
yeah, and because of the weakness, they're putting out more false information every day. And I saw this interesting, or I listened to this interesting interview that was sent to me by a couple of listeners, so I checked it out. And this was on the Higher Side Chats, and the interview was with a gentleman named Peter Robbins, who is a Wilhelm Reich expert. So, of course, I get excited because I love Wilhelm Reich's work. And I'm also curious to see from what point of view the research is coming from. Peter Robbins has studied Wilhelm Reich's work for decades,
yes,
much longer than me.
We were both curious to see what was said, and even more curious to see what was not said.
Well, that was what was interesting. So I was referred by people to this interview, and somebody sent me the complete interview because for non-subscribers to this show, you can only hear part of it, and then there's an additional part that the subscribers can hear. So I actually got to hear that part.
And sort of a Q&A session afterwards.
Yeah, the delivery of the account of Wilhelm Reich's life was correct. Everything that Peter Robbins said for the first hour and a half was a totally accurate historic account of Wilhelm Reich's life and work. It was rather dry, in my opinion, rather uninspired and a little stodgy. That's my opinion as the listener. However, it was all historically correct and accurate. In the post-show, with the Q&A, that's where things changed a little bit. So I had only heard the first part, and I was like, well, that's a pretty accurate portrayal of his life. But he didn't really get into how we can use this energy, and didn't get into the really inspiring, cool stuff that Orgone Energy does. In the post-show, everything kind of changed in tone.
Yeah, it did. I noticed it right away, actually. As soon as that Q&A session started, the interviewer, up until that point, was very, very passive presence, almost like he was not even there at all. Like this was just kind of a monologue by this guy, Peter Robbins. And then suddenly the guy just took over, and I could tell it in his tone of voice. It changed instantly.
Well, in the Q&A, the first question was about orgonite. But he didn't refer to it as orgonite. He called it paperweights.
Yep.
And
didn't even call it orgonite till about the second or third time he was describing the actual stuff.
That's what you put on the customs form, okay? You put paperweights on there. And when we were at the art fair in Bakersfield attempting to sell orgonite, which didn't go well because nobody there understood it, people called it paperweights. That's what it looks like. But in the interview, he asked about the paperweights, and I detected a sarcastic tone. Maybe that's my interpretation.
I detected it too, and I detected it right away.
And
that was the first topic.
Peter Robbins dismissed the orgonite and said that he doesn't know how it's supposed to work. And I have to say that anybody who has studied the work of Wilhelm Reich would have to know how orgonite works. And he didn't mention the orgonite's inventor, who was named Carl Wells, who invented orgonite in the mid-90s based on Wilhelm Reich's work. He only mentioned that the hippies at the different fairs he'd been to and different events didn't really explain how it worked very well, and that he didn't feel anything from it. And a lot of orgonite's not made correctly. You might not feel anything from orgonite not made with the proper materials and ratios. And in
If
addition,
a Wilhelm Reich expert, so-called expert, is asking hippies at an art fair how orgonite works, there's something really wrong with that.
I know that anybody who has studied the work would have to see that there's a combination of organic and inorganic material, just like Reich used in the accumulator. And he talked about this on the show, actually. They talked about the orgone accumulator. And there were a lot of interesting points made about Wilhelm Reich's work. But again, it was a historic perspective and not much current knowledge to add to it. So that kind of troubled me a little bit, was the dismissing of orgonite. And there were inaccuracies. And the inaccuracies came out.
There were several.
But they came out only in the Q&A session at the end, so most listeners wouldn't hear them. But having read the same books that Peter Robbins has read, particularly Contact with Space, there were a few points he made that were incorrect, so I do want to clear the air on this for anyone who heard it. He refers to cloud busting as weather modification, which it is not.
No.
It is georestoration, it's climate restoration. Cloud busting is not just about making rain, it's about restoring the balance of the weather that is naturally supposed to be there.
The parasites are the ones doing the weather modification. This is the undoing of that. So, go back to the first link in the chain, is what I say.
The other thing he said was that cloud busting breaks up clouds, and he referred to cumulus clouds being broken up in a cloud busting experiment. Cloud busting breaks up DOR clouds. This comes directly from Wilhelm Reich's work in the core volumes. That's Cosmic Orgone Engineering. He describes specifically cloud busting means breaking up DOR clouds. And in today's world, that means geoengineering. It doesn't break up clouds. It breaks up pollution clouds, chemtrail clouds.
Big difference.
So that was an inaccuracy. And the last one that I do need to stress here is that Robin said that UFOs were attracted to the energy from the cloudbuster and showed up because of it. Actually,
quite the opposite.
In Reich's accounts written in Contact with Space, the UFOs were repelled by the energy from the cloudbuster. And Wilhelm Reich himself referred to this as interplanetary war. He recognized that the source of the dangerous energy came from the UFOs somehow, even though he was new to it, never meant to stumble upon it. He did note that. So these are 3 inaccuracies that need to be addressed for anybody who's listened to this, because I've read the same volumes and you can read them too and make your own assessment of what it all means.
Yeah, I feel like this is almost like a little bit of a continuation from our previous episode where we had to call forth some inaccuracies that were troubling us. And this thing just came out like not that long ago.
Well, this is in the past week.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah, this needs to be, because a couple people brought this to our attention, a couple of our listeners, they emailed us, so
yeah,
it's starting to get out there, and as the knowledge gets out there, so are the inaccurate things that people say. So,
well, I will also mention that not once did Peter Robbins mention EMF, chemtrails, or geoengineering.
Yeah.
And he also said that he wishes someone would petition the governor's office to start cloud busting in California to end the drought.
Okay, if anyone knows anything about us or this show, they know our stance on petitioning the government. They know exactly what our stance is. And do I need to repeat what our stance is?
You don't,
I feel like it's implied at this point.
Well,
I don't want to sound like, Bill Hicks or something.
Well, it's okay to sound like Bill Hicks. He's a genius.
That's true.
Or was a genius.
I can't really bring myself to smoke cigarettes like that, though.
Well, that's for the better. But anyway, Peter Robbins seemed unaware of modern-day scientists working and furthering the field, like Ken Rolla. He has to have come upon Ken Rolla's work in the course of his research. He focused on scientists who are conducting cloud-busting experiments, which are just mimicking what Wilhelm Reich has already done. And he's not talking at all about people who are moving forward in the field of ergonomy. There are new studies, there are new discoveries every day.
Many.
And that actually brings me to our wonderful guest tonight, who is really furthering the research and the work in these fields. It's a related field called Tensor field technology. Our guest tonight is Brian Besco.
And we've had him on our show before, and we're very glad to have him back. Brian Besco is the master builder and leader in tensor technologies at twistedsage.com. His studio creates some of the most profound tools on the planet, which are anchored into the physical through sacred measures. He is a renowned energy worker, seer, shaman, healer, dowser, and geomancer, author, teacher, and facilitator of several new modalities and processes. He does workshops all across the country at places such as Tesla Tech, Star Knowledge and UFO conventions, dowsing conventions, radionics workshops, and metaphysical fairs, as his work has influence in all of the above fields and beyond. Brian, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome back to the Human Frequency.
Hey, Gabe and Sharon. Yeah, it's good to be back.
Well, we're excited to have you back again to go further into the information you provided on the last episode on tensor rings and tensor fields. And since we haven't talked to you in a while, what have you been working on? What's new in your work?
Oh, wow. A lot of the work that I do is centered around, the consciousness work. And that's been shifting fast. I mean, we're just seeing ourselves stepping every minute into a new world. And
Mm-hmm.
so as far as the conscious, I mean, we've just, the stuff that's been coming through, because my sister is a huge influence on the work that I do here with the tensor tools and bringing all the energetics into the physical through the tensor rings. Um, and the things that my sister's been bringing through has just been phenomenal. I mean, we've been seeing instant healings occur. Just some mind blowing stuff, really, really.
It's amazing.
So,
We too have been noticing amazing shifts lately, and a lot of it is through new knowledge.
And very rapid ones
It's
at that.
it's amazing what's going on this planet right now. It's like an accelerated shift in consciousness.
And as it happens, we find ourselves less and less able to describe it in words.
exactly. It's so beyond our comprehension because, none of us have ever been here before. So
That's true. It
it's
is
a
a new
beautiful
point.
thing.
Well, for our listeners who are just tuning in and maybe didn't hear your previous interview, can you just give us an overview and review of what the tensor rings are and the tensor field technologies you're working with?
Oh, certainly. So it was Slim Sperling who rediscovered this technology in the early 90s. It's based on the sacred measurements. Most of the sacred measurements that we use are come from megalithic structures like the Great Pyramids, the standard Teotihuacan unit, which has its roots in the construction of a lot of the pyramids in South America, as well as the geomancy on the Earth, such as the measurement between certain points, like the different pyramids and Stonehenge and such, all the sacred sites. It's these specific measurements that when we put them into a copper ring, it creates a tensor field. Now, the tensor fields are neither electric nor magnetic. They actually restructure electromagnetics. These fields make water lighter in weight in the lab because it's putting a positive right-hand spin to the water molecule. Um, we work with some gals who wrote the book Dancing with Water, and they're coming out with their second edition of the book here pretty soon, I think in the spring of 2017. But with Dancing with Water and the research that they've done, they're showing that the tensor fields are bringing water to its original crystalline structure, which is a huge thing. We've done some biofeedback studies as well with showing how the tensor fields will take your cell phones and they restructure the radiation, the EMFs that come from your cell phones, and actually make your organs function better. They align your chakras, because the tensor fields it's something it's hard to find the scientific data that
Mm-hmm.
can show what these, there's gaseous discharge visualization, GDV photo imaging. We did do some GDV photo imaging with the tensor fields. Well, actually, we did GDV with a magnet. And with that photo imaging, you can actually see the magnetic lines. And then you take a tensor ring and you place over the magnet, and it just makes the lines disappear. So the tensor rings are considered a room temperature superconductor. They contain an infinite amount of energy, and again, neither electric nor magnetic.
That must
So
be
they're made out of twisted copper wire. Hmm.
that must be pretty hard to measure. People are always asking me how can I measure orgone energy, and it seems very, very difficult to measure the tensor fields. I think it's really interesting that you've got people in labs working on this. So the science behind it is fascinating. When you have the in the
It
yeah.
Yeah, Slim Sperling started. He worked with a lot of scientists when he first started out. And even the military stepped in, and where the military found that they could not, weaponize this technology, they of course didn't want anything to do with it there. Um, so, where we just don't have the scientific um, devices. I mean, you can find certain frequencies within the tensor rings. Some of them have a measurable frequency that you can find with an oscilloscope.
Mhm.
Um, but as these newer rings have come through, it's you cannot measure the frequencies because they are unknown to us. Like it's the frequencies of certain light rays, just things that have been out of our realm that are immeasurable. But the beautiful thing, just like orgone energy, is that you can measure what it does to the biological system, whether it's a person, the environment, plants, animals. And that's where, we see that phenomenal results occur.
Hmm. Yeah, I was actually just going to ask you if tensor field technology was related to orgone energy, and I know it is, but they must share many similarities. Can you talk about that?
Ooh, you know, and as far as that goes, I'm not familiar enough with orgone energy. I mean, I've studied I've read a little bit about Wilhelm Reich and the basic premise of this, but nobody's really been able to nail down exactly what the tensor fields are. Now, the reason that they're called tensor fields is it's based on the mathematical theory that was put out there in the 50s, this tensor field theory. And so that's the reason that they're called the tensor fields. But as far as the actual energy, I know a lot of people equate it to like chi and prana,
Hmm.
things like that. I believe that they all have enough of a subtle variance within that frequency. I know that orgone and tensor fields work together very well. That's for sure. They seem to amplify each other.
Well, that's good because now we have your tensor rings here along with all the orgonite, and I've definitely noticed a difference. And energetically sensitive people have tried on my tensor rings and they love them. They don't even want to take them off again. So it definitely is doing something
Yeah.
similar. And likewise, the both energies are restructuring EMFs. So that interests me a lot because that's how we can really protect ourselves against these dangerous energies around us. Can you talk a little more about how the tensor fields neutralize the dangerous energies from cell phones and Wi Fi?
Oh, sure. So, like with the original rings that Slim Sperling came out with, which was the 144 megahertz, it was a measurable frequency. Um, that one in itself, what everybody was seeing is that you could still measure, with your tri-field meter, you'll still find that there is an electromagnetic field coming out of a fuse box, let's say. But when you put a tensor ring over that, you'll still have that measurable amount of energy, but it's it's totally different. It becomes healthful and beneficial. It restructures it. So like our cell phone tabs that we have, there's still the energy that comes out, but it is restructured into something that is beneficial. And that's what we did some biofeedback studies. We had a company out on the East Coast do these biofeedback studies for us, and that's what they were showing was that the EMFs from your phone would cause the disruption within your biological. It would make your organs function, uh, you know, less functioning with the organs, as well as knock your chakras out of alignment. But with the cell phone tab on there, it is actually making that a beneficial energy then.
Hmm.
And that's the same like our meter rings. But then this goes, beyond um, beyond the static frequencies, like the measurable 144 megahertz that comes from the sacred qubit ring that Slim Sperling rediscovered. Um, Now those rings, they do restructure electromagnetics, but it is the higher consciousness aspect of these tools that we're working with that is able to follow the electric structure within your household. So you could take a standard ring, a 144 megahertz ring, and you could put it over your smart meter, your electrical meter, and it would clear the energy to make it beneficial right around the meter, but it would not follow through the electrical current of your household. So once we started to understand that these tensor rings are also an access point for beneficial consciousness. And what I mean by that is our meter rings work with the consciousness of the earth elementals, that of electricity, and that of the copper. And so when you put a meter ring around your electrical meter, then it is following through the entire household and into the earth because all of our electrical are grounded into the earth. So it is utilizing the consciousness and the energies of the earth and that of electricity, and it is changing that structure. Um, and that part is just so far beyond, um, most of our comprehension and understanding is what these tensor rings are doing, beyond what we would call science. It is a totally a bridging of spirit and science.
Right, that's what I love about this technology in Oregon too, is it is the merging of science and spirituality. So when I was talking earlier about the interview I listened to and the dry presentation, I wasn't getting any of the spiritual element at all. It wasn't even talking about a lot of the science of it. So I really appreciate how you can put this all together for us. It was my understanding that these types of rings and the orgonite are restructuring EMF to make it less harmful. As far as making it beneficial, I wasn't really aware of that. I just knew that it made it less harmful to us. So I'm interested to know more about it because I slipped that meter ring on my neighbor's smart meter. They haven't noticed it. On our house, we got rid of the smart meter. I like the idea of busting meters everywhere. Nobody can even see the ring on there. So it's pretty
Yeah,
inconspicuous. I think it's a great way to take care of other people's meters that might not know that it's even being done.
with minimal invasiveness onto
Right.
their private property.
Well, yeah, I did it in the dark, discreetly, and walked away really fast. And it's benefiting them, so they don't know it, but it's helping them too. But I'm interested in the idea of turning that energy around because my understanding is that these organites that we make and the tensor rings you make are neutralizing, but to make it beneficial, that goes along with the idea of flipping cell towers, which we do, and turning them into something that creates rain rather than suppressing it. So, can you talk a little bit more about how does it actually become a beneficial energy once you do that?
well, of course, intention is everything, but with the tensor rings, it goes much beyond intention. Um, when I first started making the tensor rings about 6 years ago in this lifetime, and that's the thing is that you know it's having the remembrances of making this stuff through many lifetimes, and so just like every one of us who is here on this planet right now, we have been working up to this point because this is such a huge time, and everybody talks about it being such a huge time. But once you are actually witnessing it and seeing the miracles occur, and seeing the shifts and changes in consciousness and in our physical reality, then things become a lot more real. Um, like what you were talking with, to give it kind of an example for your question there is like the cell phone towers. Um, we were working with this, what we called anchoring lights, we would, with intention, go into the heart space, because once you go into the heart, your ego does not have that control. So when you're in the heart, you also have that connection to the higher aspects of you, your soul, all that you are, the entire soul spark. When you go into the heart and you create a column of light that you intend and visualize, that comes from Source, Creator, God, Central Sun, whatever you see and say that as, and you see that column of light come down into the earth and then straight back up, so it's between the earth and Source. That column of light we see is restructuring electromagnetics. So, as a water operator for many municipalities here in the Black Hills of South Dakota, I was anchoring lights into the wells, and we could see it energetically going into the water and just raising the vibration of the water. We started doing this with cell phone towers, and it changed that energy to be something beneficial. Now, when you anchor a column of light like that with your intention, that column of light will stay there for 8 days unless you put your attention back to it. So I was asking my sister is Brenda Snows. I refer a lot to Brenda. Metatron is her right hand. Thoth just walks with her. She's just an amazing, amazing, humble being. I asked her about anchoring these lights, and she said, well, create a grid. So December 26th of 2012, a path partner and I created what we called the Global Love and Gratitude Grid, where we were able to anchor a column of light into a cell phone tower, and that cell phone tower would then send out the frequencies of unconditional love and gratitude throughout its entire area. And then once we connected up to the rest of this global love and gratitude grid with an intention, those columns of light would stay there without going away after 8 days. So we started that, 4 years ago, and it's all over the globe. I mean, people have been anchoring these columns of light into the cell phone towers, and then they will put out those frequencies of love and gratitude. And so that is one way that we are using consciousness, higher vibration energies, intention, visualization, as well as these grids. So there's so much of this on those planes, to be able to change and restructure all that. So the physical tools, whether it's orgonite or tensor rings or many of the others out there, I feel are just the physical anchoring for that.
Mm-hmm.
So we can anchor columns of, we can use the physical tools to do the same work.
I agree with that these are physical tools that are linking to a higher dimension,
Yeah.
and that they're manifesting themselves here. I totally can see that, because I've explained to people a lot that the orgonite that we make, it's not the cure-all. It's going to help you get to who you are. So it's not that the orgonite does it for you. Mm-hmm. It's that you can do it, and the orgonite is a tool to help you get there.
Sort of like a vitamin supplement
for your energy.
For your energy, almost. And, we encounter a lot of people in our daily life, and when we go out and do events and online, people who they want that quick fix. They want to just have it done for them and be done with it, and not have to do anything like, say, inner work, for example. Mm-hmm. So it is that I'm just repeating, I guess, the same thing you are sharing.
Yeah, it's interesting, Brian, that you can make that column of light. I mean, I could say that must have been what happened in December of 2012, because something was happening. I mean, yeah. That might be just part of the global shift that was underway, but there definitely was a big change that happened at that time period, and I think that you are a part of that. And I think that the people who are gifting the cell towers around North America are all connecting in with what you did there. I just got an email from someone who gifted 100 kilometers around Regina, Saskatchewan. So it's really awesome to hear someone doing it up there in Canada. And if he's listening, I want to say thank you for your work. And here in California, we've gifted thousands of organites, and there's others joining in every day. I'm hearing from people all over the world. Many people. We're creating this.
They're coming out of the woodwork. I mean, they're already doing it. We're just not aware of it until they say, hey, I did over here, or I did over there.
Yeah.
And it's just, again, the same thing that you're doing with the cell towers is that it's a grid. It's just one and then another, and then it all adds up.
And I think it's interesting too that these parasitic entities put these cell phone towers in a grid fashion across the land, as if marking out the places where we need to put the good energy.
Thanks, guys.
So it's just follow their grid and undo it and turn it around, right?
Oh, certainly, yeah. It's the newer form of geomancy where, it used to be the capitals and the obelisks and everything else, but gosh, and when you can use a cell phone tower on top of a already existing geomagnetic line, yeah, that's that's a great way to do it.
Well, we know a
And
little
so,
bit.
yeah, every time we change.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, just every time every time somebody gifts to those cell phone towers, exactly, we're just helping to restructure those grids all around the planet. That's a beautiful thing.
It certainly is. Well, we know a little bit about dowsing, but you mentioned geomancy a lot. What is a geomancer?
Well, geomancing is you start back like with the pyramids, and all the sacred sites that are all over the world. They all connect, and I'm sure if you looked up like ley lines, and ley lines are one of the main geomagnetic grid lines that there's connecting all those sacred sites all over the world. Um, so to me, I feel like when the beings first came in, whoever they were, to put the pyramids all over the globe, it was a form of basically setting a reality because it is an electromagnetic field that is connected with the earth that, I feel is that carrier for our reality. Um, when when the Masons and it's bigger than the Masons, or it was, all that stuff is pretty much gone now. But when when the Masons came in, especially in the U.S., they were putting their, well, even before this, they were putting churches on top of sacred sites. Now, a sacred site is nothing more than a naturally occurring intersecting point of geomagnetic lines, which creates a portal vortex. That is a sacred site. So if you find any sacred site on this planet, that is founded in intersecting of geomagnetic lines. Now, when people came in, they started putting churches on top of these sacred sites. I always thought in the beginning that it was a form of social control, but I feel it was a form of energetic control because of the fact that once you start putting, it's kind of like building pyramids, that it is basically creating that reality. So when you look at, Washington, D.C. is a great example
Oh
of
yeah.
how they built that city. Yeah, yeah, because, that is the spot where for the ley lines, that is one of the largest intersecting point of ley lines on North America,
Oh yeah,
is
for
right
sure.
there in.
And the energetic control precipitates the social control, so they are in a way related.
Exactly, exactly. And then that went into the church grids, that went into, state capitals, military bases, all that stuff, and and then, too, you can find the different obelisks, like the 100-foot tall towers that the Masons built. They were used to divert those magnetic lines, those geomagnetic lines. And and so that's the same with a lot of those huge cell phone towers that are out there now, is that they were placed on top of those grid lines, like you
Mm,
say. And
definitely.
so, the work that, yeah, so the work that we do is huge. Um, and but it's such a beautiful thing too that most of these grids are totally fallen apart. They're cleared. The church grid is cleared. The most of the Masonic temple stuff was cleared. All the graveyard stuff is cleared. There was just so many different grids out there that were there at one time, and that's like the global love and gratitude grid, where it was separate from the Earth. And about 2 years ago, it became a part of the Earth. It became more of a natural grid. She just basically adopted it.
Wow.
And at the same time, we were seeing that so many of those other artificial grids were being just sloughed off, like the reservation grid. Um, we noticed that one a couple of years ago, that all the different reservations in North America had weird stuff going on at the same time on every one of them. And, so it, I give thanks to those who set all this stuff up, because if you take a step back from all this stuff, it's a part of duality. And to me, we needed these things in order for expansion and growth. We needed a reason for expansion and growth. And so if
Absolutely.
there's something that, yeah, so
And this could
I
this could
yes, I,
explain why the dorky loser parasite collective is just freaking out like they never have before.
Yeah, they're losing their control.
oh, exactly. Because all the batteries are gone. I mean, these grids have been dismantled and cleared. And so there's nothing really out there except for fear. And media is about one of the last big things that's out there helping to promote fear.
Right.
And otherwise there is no power left in any of this stuff.
Yeah, they only
You
rule
know?
us through fear. They
Deception.
yeah, they deceive us into thinking we have no power, and then they scare us. And it's good that you brought up the media. That's true. That's one of the last things they have, and even that one is falling apart. I see more and more videos on YouTube every day that are just dismantling and taking apart all of these lies, as well as the entertainment industry, that it's just exposing the MK Ultra and the music industry. I mean, I see more and more people every day get it and see what a lie it all is.
And those people are going into ever deeper and deeper forays into peeling away the layers and the layers. And
It's so
just,
exciting.
yeah.
It's really wonderful, especially young
Yeah.
people. Young people really seem to get it, and it's very inspirational that they're not necessarily looking at what's being fed to them in the media anymore and just accepting that they're analyzing it now and deconstructing it. It's great.
Oh yeah, it's these younger kids can see through all the lies and the BS. They can see things for what they are, and that really is going to help to, just keep sweeping away the stuff.
Well, we'll just
You
have
know,
to
and like
we'll have to agree to disagree on that because I think the baby boomers are clearly the most aware.
Ah, good one, Gabe.
I couldn't even keep a straight face for that whole sentence.
They're too pampered. Well, I mean,
Sorry, any boomers out
yeah,
there.
sorry guys. But no, everybody's waking up. But I think that the younger people, because they don't have that economic stability that the older generations had, they really don't have anything kind of grounding them in the false matrix anymore. So,
Like Social Security, for instance.
right, we're not going to have that. None of the young people are going to have that. So they're starting to look a little beyond what's being told to them.
yes, yes. Well, yeah, we saw that the Hollywood grid. A few years ago, we tried to anchor lights like in the MGM studios and things like that out in LA. And, it was in the highest and best good that we could not anchor lights into that stuff because it was still needed. That's just like the Vatican. Right now it's, at the time when we were doing the clearing of all the church grids, we couldn't touch any of that stuff because it was still needed,
Oh,
because that's through duality. And so it was interesting that about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we saw that Hollywood grid was cracking, and so we just came in and finished clearing it.
wow. I'm so
Um,
excited to hear that. Gabe and I are from LA, and we've worked in Hollywood. We've worked
oh,
on these productions as background actors and stand ins. And I've seen the lies firsthand from behind the scenes. And I'm so happy to hear that you're doing work there.
We were paid to see the lies.
Yeah. And paid to
And,
eat free food.
and poorly, by the way.
Yeah. I'd like to know what you did
yeah,
in LA exactly, because that interests me greatly, because there's a definite satanic influence there, dark energy. But I feel LA lightening up. We did a lot of organite gifting in LA, hundreds of towers busted. I would say there's at least 1,000 of our organites in LA right now.
minimum.
Minimum.
Oh,
I mean, it's hard to tell really, but
Yeah.
there's a lot.
you.
So yeah, what did you do down there?
Oh, well, actually, I did it from the comforts of my own home in South Dakota.
Ah,
And that's
nice.
the beautiful thing about work is that, we can do the work anywhere. Um, but for the physical, actually, I'm getting ready here probably in about 2 weeks or so. I'm going to be taking one of our ascension chambers out, the 5D animator. And we're proposing a place out there, the Aura Shop in LA, to set up a chamber there. And it creates a 300-mile wide tube torus
Wow.
of the tensor field. So
That's
within that
exciting.
whole area,
Yeah.
it is, it is. And and that's kind of like with the cell phone towers and anchoring in lights into those towers, and it would be the same with putting the 5D animator downtown LA, is that it will restructure the electromagnetics. Like, let's say a cell phone tower that you anchor a light into and connect it to the global love and gratitude grid. It is pumping out the frequencies of unconditional love and gratitude, and anybody who is unaware will be receiving that frequency. But if somebody, because we are all powerful, powerful creators, if we see a cell phone tower and we're like, oh man, that thing's hurting me, or oh, that's bad news, then all of a sudden it's going to do just that.
Hmm.
It is no longer going to be pumping out frequencies of love and gratitude because we all have our free will choice. And so that's kind of, and that goes in the long lines of the tensor fields, is that they will not disrupt a person's free will. And so if it is in the highest and best good for a person to have cancer, let's say, then they'll have cancer. Um, and so it's,
What you're saying is
yeah,
we're
I mean,
creating our reality. We're creating our lives. So whatever we're living is our creation.
And this can also explain why multiple people can look up at the same sky and see two completely different things
Yeah.
or more.
yes, yes. Indeed, and that's it. We don't have within our local reality here, we don't have chemtrails. We don't have a lot of the crap here within our local reality.
We don't either
And
here in the mountains
Mm-hmm.
where we live. And people in LA don't have them either. Well, whenever I'm there, there aren't any there. And when we were living up there, they would try to spray them and they disappear immediately. That's what we see, if at all. And
beautiful.
yeah. And then there's people that tell me they see terrible chemtrails all the time. I'm seeing the same sky, I think, but I'm not seeing the chemtrails. So what did that say about the nature of reality?
Yeah, and we are all such powerful creators, and we all get together and we're all creating the same thing. Oh yeah, then totally we are changing our whole entire local reality. And that's what we saw with chemtrails in the beginning was, because I had that concern because, of course, I fell into fear about it, when I started first hearing about it. So, I asked my sister to help me try to figure that out to see if maybe the tensor tools would assist in that. And what they were showing us was that it was a creation of reality. And so, people started to see it and they're like, oh, yeah, we have those too. And then they created.
Hmm.
And we've seen this not only just a larger thing, but even the smallest thing within a person's reality of creating dis-ease. And, and we are super, super powerful creators. And so that's the whole thing too about clearing out the fear and not creating from fear, because that is where we were locked into everything, was that fear is a powerful, powerful force. um, Fear and anger and all those vibrations um, are a very powerful thing.
Yeah, we
But
experience a lot
yet,
of that.
it's
The people that are afraid are contacting me often about their fear of chemtrails. I get a lot of that. And it's hard to tell a person who's really new to these topics there's really nothing to be afraid of because they get confused by that. And
yeah, because it is a real thing. I mean, because it's, as creators, everything is real, you
right.
know. And
So what do you tell people when they're coming to you? Because I know that the rings are so helpful, and some people may come to you wanting a quick fix, which we get that sometimes. What do you tell people who just want that quick fix, who think that the ring's going to change their lives? Do you have advice for them?
Yeah, I say, okay, well, let's do a 5 minute meditation and then we'll get to the bottom of it and we'll do the clearing and the connecting because the rings are doing fantastic things, but the rings are what we see as the most powerful thing in all of creation is us, is the entire and complete us, our entire soul spark. So this is where we see the miracles take place and the shifts occur is that we do the connecting with people. We connect them into their heart, we connect them to all that they are, we do the clearing work and the anchoring work. And and what, like I say, my sister, what she's been bringing through is so cutting edge on the expansion of creation that this stuff has never been done in any creation before. And so when somebody comes to get a quick fix, that's usually what I'll say is that we need to do the consciousness work first, though the rings can certainly help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, as powerful as the rings are, and we get phone calls, emails every day of people who have had miracles occur within their own being or that of their loved ones. And it is just huge. And
Yeah.
the reason that I feel that occurs is because our rings, the balance and harmony ring, it is connecting them into their higher soul self. It is helping to do all that clearing work. And it is the person's own being who produces the miracles, the instant healings, the clearings, everything.
I wear your
And
balance and
so
harmony
our
ring all
rings
the
are
time, by
only
the way. I wear it constantly, except when I'm in the shower.
oh, wonderful. Yeah, it's good stuff. You never get too much of these fields because it does work with the higher consciousness. So, it only brings through what is in the highest and best good for every person. That 5D animator, our ascension chamber, that is energetically within that ring. The frequencies and properties of all the plant kingdom, the mineral kingdom, the crystal kingdom, the rays of light, all these different modalities. It's just a huge, huge toolbox, is what the harmony ring is. And it gets updated all the time. So the ring that you're wearing, anytime that we update the harmony rings energetically, it goes to everyone that's been created. Um, and that's where these tensor rings, the rings that we're creating here at Twisted Sage Studios, go so far beyond just a sterile frequency emitter like the 144 megahertz ring. Um, these are, they're bringing through so much more than that.
Hmm.
And like I say, the biggest thing is that connection to the higher soul self and all that you are.
So, what do
So
you do when the quick fix
that's
person emails you back a week later saying, the 5 minute meditation didn't work, the rings aren't helping, what do I do? How do you handle that?
well, um, that doesn't really happen. Um, we get a couple of people, once in a while who do have a lot of issues that is part of their journey. But to, in all reality, once, you can watch on YouTube, we have on the Twisted Sage channel, we have the 5D animator attunement video. You watch that, and that is doing all that clearing work when you watch it. And so it only works in the highest and best good. So if it is part of a person's path to be in chaos or to, have a dis-ease, then that's just what's going to be, until for whatever reason, whether that is for their, and all that goes back to your own growth and learning on a soul level. But very rarely do we get, people who still have ongoing issues.
I really enjoyed the 5D animator at Contact in the Desert. So I think it's really amazing. There's going to be one placed in Los Angeles where people can go. So can you let us know again where it's going to be so we can all check it out?
We are going to be proposing to put it at the Aura shop. It is a
Or
crystal shop in
okay,
LA.
cool.
Yeah, and we're still waiting on that. So definitely just check out the website at twistedsage.com, and we will definitely start listing because it's our intention to put these structures up all over the globe. And and people are so interested in this stuff that people are wanting to do funding to put them up and build giant structures,
Nice.
um,
I think people are
like a dance
extremely
hall.
interested now in these things because people have been actually donating to us to help us gift more organite. Everybody wants more of this good energy out there
It,
now.
it, it is building noticeably,
Yeah.
and things are starting to come to a head.
It's great because everyone's becoming very cooperative. So it's not just me and Gabe anymore, scraping together the money to make organite. Now people are saying, "Hey, let me help you so we can make way, way more organite," and it's amazing.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, there's a lot of light bulbs coming on, and we're seeing a giant wave of consciousness, and anymore it's just looking like a tidal wave of just people waking up.
And none of those bulbs
And
are compact fluorescent bulbs, thankfully. So people can come to your website, twistedsage.com, and they can find out basically everything about what you're doing, any upcoming projects, stuff like that, right?
yeah, we'll be updating our website to have, more of the workshops and upcoming projects that we'll have going on. Right now, I just encourage people to go to the resources page because there's a lot of the free videos out there. We actually mentor people. Well, we have a website that's linked to the twistedsage.com website that gives everybody all the sacred measurements to use. And there's a video on how to make the tensor rings. And of course, there's a lot of Facebook pages out there too that are dedicated to tensor rings as well. And so it's pretty much become a household word, which is super fantastic. And so, more and more people are getting interested in using them. And their use is just limitless. I mean, people use it in radionics, people use it for dowsing. There's a lot of people who have been picking it up and using it in orgonite.
That's
Um,
true.
That's very
so if you get,
interesting. We had someone leave a comment on one of our videos about inquiring what would happen placing
I
tensor
haven't
rings
put one in
inside
yet.
pieces.
I haven't done it yet, but I had another listener get in touch saying she's going to do it. So,
It is a very interesting thing, and we'll perhaps start doing that, and we'll give updates too at our website, thechembo.com. That's THECHEMBOW. And a reminder to you all, if you like what you hear, please go to AmericanFreedomRadio.com and click the donate button. It's listener supported. And if you don't like what you hear, please go to AmericanFreedomRadio.com and click the donate button. So I think this is a very interesting topic. I've been looking forward to discussing this. This is so interesting. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a huge LA Kings fan, and I'm missing the opening game tonight to be doing this. So this is
well, I
this is
appreciate it, Gabe.
well, we'll finish up and maybe I can catch some of the third period, but I'm not holding my breath. I'll wear my Tetsu rings while I do it. So rest assured,
well, maybe
I will
that
be
5D
protected.
animator will help the Kings. It's going to be pretty near the Staples Center.
Yeah, maybe step on in and make tape to tape passes and big saves in the goal.
Yeah. Well, I put a lot of good energy into them back in 2012 to help them get the first Stanley Cup.
I thank you for that. You're listening to The Human Frequency on American Freedom Radio. Please join in for hour 2. Thanks.
Welcome back to the Human Frequency on American Freedom Radio. We're here tonight with Brian Besco of twistedsage.com talking all about tensor rings and tensor fields and this beautiful beneficial energy and how it can help our lives. Brian, thanks again for being with us tonight.
Oh, thank you guys. I appreciate sharing and Gabe.
Well, we wanted to ask you a few more technical questions about how the tensor rings work because I know everybody wants to know when they got the tensor rings, how much area is being covered by the ring? Like I wear the 333 megahertz on my wrist around my arm. Is that covering more than my arm?
So actually within that ring, it creates a column of light that goes out both sides. It's a counter-rotating vortex. Your 333 megahertz, that is the standard frequency on that one, which that one actually changes the color of sound, which is really fun to play with if you know somebody who can see the color of sound. Um, but it goes for miles out both sides. So when you put the rings into a different physical formation, such as a coil, it'll create a tube torus. Like the some of our little coils, just our small coils, have a tube torus that is about 3/4 of a mile across in size. Then you can put them into the spheres. The Genesa crystal, that geometry that has the four rings, the Genesa crystal was discovered by a plant geneticist, um, Dr. Langerman. And when you put the tensor rings, four rings, into that structure, that creates more of a sunshine effect. And some of these have a sphere of influence of 12 miles across.
That's amazing. It's good news too, because I was wondering about it when I'm wearing it. I'm wondering, is this if I put it under my pillow, for instance, when I sleep? I was wondering if that works, and I guess it's putting out that field for quite a distance.
Yeah, and again, it just creates that column of energy in a single ring. Now, you can place a quartz crystal within that ring, and that will help to, dissipate that energy more out into more of a funnel
Oh,
fashion.
nice. Well, I got lots of
But
quartz
again,
crystals, so I'm gonna try
Yep,
it.
no shortage of those.
yeah, and that's it works with the consciousness of that crystal as well. And where they create that column of light, that's where a lot of people are using like larger rings around, the cloud busters.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Slim Spurling, yes, because it totally amplifies everything. I mean, it synergizes with each other. If you have a piece of organite that just doesn't feel right, you put a tensor ring around it and it changes the energetics of it too, because it restructures that just like it would electromagnetics. Um, it restructures things like radionics. So if you are using a frequency emitting device, um, you can put the tensor ring around it just to help guarantee that it's not going to do any harm
So the little
because it's
guys, the
restructured.
tiny ones you make, the are like finger ring sized. How far would something that
Hmm.
small go?
Again, for miles.
That's amazing.
So the tiniest one, like the little 3/4 inch one, is just as powerful as like a 27-inch ring. It's just that they have a larger column of light.
I was wondering about where this all came from because I think this is divine knowledge, these tensor fields and the tensor rings. And you had mentioned that Slim Sperling rediscovered it, not discovered it. So I wanted to ask if you knew how did Slim Sperling come upon this knowledge?
Well, he first discovered that there were these straight line cubit measures that came from the Great Pyramids. There was actually a gentleman who found these measurements above the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. And one of these qubit measures actually produces the sine wave of the hydrogen atom. So you can cut anything into that straight line measurement and it will emit the frequency of a hydrogen atom. 8.3 inches is one sine wave of that hydrogen atom frequency. And so Slim was he was working with he was a self-taught geodowser. He would find geomagnetic lines and going on the ancient Chinese texts where they talk about the dragon and tiger lines and some of them being beneficial, he discovered through using the dowsing rods, the L rods, by finding those geomagnetic lines and finding where they intersect. And that's what most dowsers do that work in homes is they find the different geomagnetic lines and where there's like different knots where they intersect, it can be non-beneficial for people. So in Germany, that's more acceptable knowledge there about these geomagnetic lines and the intersecting points of them. where they can be non-beneficial to humans. Um, Cats love the intersecting of these lines. So do bees. Bees actually produce more honey when you put them on the intersecting of these geomagnetic lines. So Slim was looking for ways to remediate a lot of the harmful effects of certain geomagnetic lines. And that's where he discovered the whole concept of the straight line qubits. Well, I don't know if he discovered the concept of the straight line, but the qubit itself. So it's the sacred qubit that comes from the king's chamber that he took a piece of copper wire, he cut it to that measurement, and he welded the ends together. He found that one side of it was beneficial and the other side of that ring was non-beneficial. So him and Bill Reed, one of his friends at the time, um, they did what electricians do, like for audio wiring, where they twist the wires together, um, it to help clear a lot of that interference. He folded that copper wire in half. He twisted it with a positive right. He twisted it clockwise and put the ends back together. Then both sides of the copper ring were producing a beneficial energy. And so that's where he stumbled upon or was guided to the creation of the tensor ring, the very first one. Now, the reason that I say rediscovered and that this is an ancient technology is because these measurements are found all over the globe. They were used in, the alignment of all the different megalithic structures on the planet. A lot of these measurements were used to construct these megalithic structures. And two, I myself feel as though I have been doing this for many lifetimes and not just on Earth. That this is part of what my incarnations as a soul spark has been doing for many lifetimes, is working on this technology.
It's beautiful.
Kind of far-fetched. Yeah, I know. Because
No, it's not
man, if I would have
far-fetched.
talked
No,
to
not
Not
at
at
all.
all.
well,
It's the same for us.
well,
It's the same. I have been around so many times, and I'm pretty sure I'm here to be doing this. And I've been told by many people who don't even realize what they're saying that I'm working with alien technology. Even people who don't know anything about ETs or don't even believe in them. I've heard one friend who doesn't know about any of this stuff say, when I told her about the orgonite, she said, sounds intergalactic. And my mom, who doesn't know that much about it, we told her we were tossing these out of the car, and she said, oh, someone will just think it fell out of a spaceship.
We've had sort of little
yeah,
clues like that come up
Yeah.
from people who are not even really aware of what they're saying. It's just
It's,
coming out, but they all indicate
yeah.
what's going on here. And well,
yeah.
I mean, as far as Wilhelm Reich goes, I feel the most damning evidence of his work and how spot on he was the suppression campaign
Yeah.
that ultimately cost him his work and his life.
And he had an ET connection too, by the way.
Yes, that is true. But I wanted to ask, did Slim Sperling have to deal with a similar suppression campaign in his time? I know he passed 9 years ago, 2007, but was he at any point dealing with anything like that?
I could only imagine that he was, because like I say, the military actually had a look at it at one point in time. So, that somebody was obviously aware of that technology.
Did he
Um,
bring
and
the attention of the military to it, or did they just find it?
in that I am unsure. I think that if I remember right, reading in one of his books, because I never met Slim in the physical, I met him after he passed. Um, But if I remember reading in one of his books that he was actually had a friend within the military who he was looking to find that scientific validation. And that's, where I say that it seems far-fetched too, because so much of this is beyond the science, because I came from the science side of things in the beginning. That's why, it was really important to me and it was important to Slim at the time to try to prove this stuff scientifically. But since there is nothing within that scientific structure that could prove that, we both, I know he kind of walked away from that, and definitely so have I. Because the proof is in the results. To me, we do have some science validating it, but really, this stuff is just so far beyond, that current scope.
It is. It's
Yeah.
beyond our science. It's beyond measure. And again, I get a lot of people asking, how can I measure the results of the orgonite? What I tell them what the orgonite is, well, the way we measure it is we do a lot of atmospheric work. We do a lot of sky cleaning and bringing back rains and ending drought. The way that we measure it is simply by the results in the sky. So we photograph it and document it and notice changes in satellite imagery and keep track of that. And
Patterns. We notice patterns in what we see, and we take pretty meticulous
yeah,
photos
but
of
people
the.
want to see it and they want to see a device measure it, and that's not necessarily going to work on orgone or tensor fields. It's something I say, well, you're going to have to feel it. You're going to have to experience it and see what it does for you.
Yeah, that's what Dow and Gardner organized Austin. He spent a couple of years in Austin, Texas, working with the tensor field generators. That he was one of the people in the beginning after I put out the video that started to construct the tools, and he was showing that the tensor field generators were changing the weather patterns there.
Yeah.
And I know that in his book, The Science of Rain, that he put out as well, he talks about that.
We tout that book quite
Yeah,
often.
we actually mentioned it last week at length on our show. The Science of Rain is an amazing book it's the manual to making these things yourself. It's the only book out there on paper that I know of that teaches you how to make these devices that can neutralize electromagnetic fields, bring back rain, clean the air. And actually one of the things I was going to ask you is how you met Dewin. We were huge fans of his work. How did you guys get in touch?
And by the way, one of the only books I've ever seen with intentionally poor syntax.
I don't know if it was intentionally poor, but I think it's a brilliant book, and I forgive the spelling errors. I don't mind at all.
I I don't remember how we met. He contacted me once after he saw, I think, the video that I had put out on how to create the tensor rings.
You know, it was his book where I first heard about your work too. That's where I first heard about Twisted Sage, and I never even heard of tensor rings or Slim Sperling until I read The Science of Rain. These technologies are all so interconnected, I think. So even if we don't know if tensor fields and orgone are the same thing, they seem to have the same result, and they seem to be a life
I
affirming energy.
Yes, completely. Yes, I agree with that.
Especially if they're amplifying each other, then
I think
that's a
so.
pretty big indication that
Yeah.
there's some kind of interconnectedness between the two.
I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your UFO connection because I know you're speaking at different UFO conferences, and we actually met you at Contact in the Desert. What is
Yeah.
the intergalactic connection here? Because I know you mentioned you've been working on this in other planets in the past, perhaps past lives. It's really interesting to me.
I'm sure. Well, let's see. So my where my tools are created on that higher dimensional plane and they are anchored in here through those sacred measures, where my tools where I connect to them, I have a go-between, which is an Arcturian. Um, and the 5D animator is based partially on an Arcturian technology, which is used to keep um, the fifth density body alive for millions of years. And so, as far as that alien connection, so to speak, I believe that our souls are infinitely old in that we have only been in this meat suit as the human for a very short period of time. And so that means that our soul spark has incarnated into many other beings throughout the multiverse, all the way back to source.
Well, it seems that
And so,
You and Laura Eisenhower have access to the same glossary of terms because she uses the term meat suit quite a lot,
It
and
cracks me
we
up.
love that one.
oh,
We heard you
right
say it.
on.
We're like, you can't see us, but we're in front of the mic going, oh my god, he said it.
Yeah, yeah, because I see everything as the physical as being totally influenced by all the other higher dimensional. I mean, we see dis-ease as starting in the emotional field usually, and then manifesting into the physical. And so everything here in our physical reality is a reflection of what is going on another reality of where we exist on that higher dimensional plane, the
Hmm.
soul, however you see it. And so I even feel like the angels are aliens, they're just incarnate of in another, uh, in another body. Granted, it's a higher dimensional one. So I feel every one of us is an alien. Of course, I don't really trust anybody who flies a metal ship. I figure they should be flying around in their Merkaba. So,
Right. Doesn't your car
that would
say
be
my
higher
other car is a
consciousness.
Merkaba?
Yeah, yeah, I have a website called crystalmerkaba.com, and we have bumper stickers that say my other vehicle's a Merkaba.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Should have one that says, "Take me to your leader."
Yeah, and that's
Yeah, we've
yeah,
definitely.
so
Go on.
oh, I was just going to reiterate that, I definitely feel like everything here in the physical always begins there.
Hmm.
And that's why, the tensor rings, like the harmony ring and such, are doing such fantastic things here on this physical, is because they are doing that connecting and that clearing on all those higher dimensional planes where we as a being exist.
Yeah, we're finding that as we work with these technologies that are really ancient technologies, that we're progressing in what we can see and what we experience every day. And one of the things that really happened for me with the tensor rings that amazed me was I had been hearing sounds in my right ear for a long time, which I took to be wireless frequencies, but only in my right ear. And when I got the 333 megahertz ring on my arm, along with the balance and harmony ring, those noises stopped, and I was amazed.
And relieved.
And I was relieved because it had been tormenting me for over a year. But then they started to come back again. And I was thinking, what the heck is going on here? Those sounds are back again. I found out that the sounds were not what I thought they were. So I'm going to actually put this out there because I'd said over and over again, I hear Wi Fi. I don't think I hear Wi Fi. I'm hearing somebody trying to communicate with me. And that's what I learned is that someone was trying to communicate with me, and perhaps they were relieved that I had the tensor ring on because they stopped talking for a while, but then they came back again. And when I found out that someone was trying to communicate with me and I was able to communicate back, then the noise would stop again. It would only come back when they were trying to communicate with me. So something about the tensor rings helped me to refocus and understand
It
these.
also helped you to gain access to another means of communication that was before unknown to you.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for that, Brian, because it helped me immensely.
Wow, that's beautiful. That is. Oh, speaking of the ancient tools, I don't know if when we spoke last time, did I mention the golden light rod?
You know
No,
what?
you
We
didn't.
have it, and I do want you to explain it because I started using it. I started holding it and trying to use it, in fact, to stop the noises in my ear, which it didn't do until I learned how to communicate with those who were communicating with me. Can you explain how that works?
Well, so it's that golden light rod. It's an ancient tool. It presents as like a golden white light, about 2 feet tall. It also has sound and color associated with it. Um, it is something that is anchored into the physical through that golden light wand. That specific measure is just the physical anchoring of this tool. So when you hold on to that physical wand, it's seen that the soul is holding on to that higher dimensional tool. And it is only the soul that can use it because it is clearing timelines and realities that no longer serve us. And that is huge. And it's not just for the human. It is true soul work. It's all this work that we do, I call it soul alchemy because it is working on more than just the human stuff. It is working on our soul stuff, all of our incarnations, all that we exist upon. So this golden light rod is something that I was trying to create a dowsing rod for somebody, and we had the intentions, just like usually when a new tool comes up, I try to create something as my conscious mind does as the human, and it usually comes out something completely different than what I was trying to create. But this time, when we were trying to create a dowsing rod that would clear geomagnetic lines and such, my sister saw that we were actually just connecting to this ancient tool. And yeah, you can use this tool to clear geomagnetic lines that are not in the highest and best good. It will either move them or it will clear them energetically, because through the geomagnetic lines also comes information. And so it can clear any of that information that comes through that's not in the highest and best good, that's not beneficial. It also will clear portals and vortexes. It'll clear entities, just because it is clearing any timelines and dimensions that are not in the highest best good for not only the soul in the human and all the soul spark, but also for environmental, right here where we're at.
Well, that's very
And again,
interesting that it clears entities, because Sharon has managed to clear an entity without the use of the golden light rod. So,
Well,
I'm sure it can
I had
only
the help
help.
of the sucker punch
That's
at the
true.
time, but yeah, that the last time that we spoke on this show, we were having an entity in our satellite dish. No, I'm not kidding. It was a real problem,
oh,
and
He was just hanging out up there, maybe drinking a beer,
I
having
I don't
some
know
hot
what
Cheetos or something. I don't know.
we had to get him out of there,
uh,
An
but
unwelcome guest.
that was affecting our connection. That'll happen. And I wanted to ask you actually about entities, because one of the things that you have talked about before is energetic implants. And I've heard about implants from different ufologists or people who research aliens and how they affect humans. But you were talking specifically about energetic implants when we were discussing that. I wanted to know more about what these are, because I think I've had them before. And I feel like a lot of them have been removed, but can you explain what they are exactly?
um, sure, they're just a higher dimensional. They have various purposes. Like a lot of times, there's something that are beneficial to us that we put on ourselves that were beneficial at a time, but as our physical raises in frequency and vibration, which all of us on the planet are raising in frequency and vibration all the time, along with the Earth, they begin to malfunction. Um, and so then usually an energetic implant will manifest physically as like a pain, a discomfort. Sometimes it physically manifests as other things too. I mean, like dislocations and, you know, um, real physical stuff. And it's usually some kind of a pain that, most people can't explain. A few years ago, we were seeing that a lot of these energetic implants they were like measuring tools. They were being used to, we'd find them like in elbows and knees and things like that. And the best we could determine is that they were measuring us for some purpose. And and as we've been raising in frequency and they've changed. I mean, all these energetic implants, because I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of different species, if you will, that are represented on this planet. And, like Andrew Bartzis, the galactic historian, he'll say that there's 2,200 different species that are represented here on the planet. Um, and so there are a lot of different technologies out there that are these implants. And so, just even again going back to that 5D animator video, you can watch that video, and that will usually remove the majority of implants that you have that are not beneficial. Um, and some of them are, you know, basically we saw that the Earth was something that was trying to be kept in control of, and we all, can kind of agree on that whole conspiracy theory that there were other beings that were trying to, maintain control of the human populace for some time. And, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, then that could be where a lot of these energetic implants come from.
Yeah, I
But
think so.
we have, yeah. And, but yet again, some of them have been beneficial at a time for us as well, you know. But yeah, so a lot of times if you do have those pains that are, doctors can't find what the heck's going on and you have some strange pain, I mean, yeah, totally have somebody who knows about those to actually take a look at it energetically and see what's going on. Because again, the physical is the last thing to manifest from the energetic.
I saw a chiropractor up here in the mountains. It was a very interesting experience for me because he worked with some technologies that I think he doesn't use on everyone because not everyone's open to it, but he could see right off that I was. And I had the orgonite, and he wanted to incorporate the orgonite into our session, which was really cool. And he worked with something called radionics. So he was very open to the idea of energetic healing, and I'm not sure how deep it goes for him, but I wanted to ask you if you could explain a little bit about what radionics is, because he was using this machine on me and I wasn't sure what it was doing, but I recovered very, very quickly from the pain that I had.
And in the exact window of time that was
Yeah,
predicted.
he told me it would take me exactly 3 days, and it was exactly 3 days. On day 2, I was impatient and I was complaining about the pain. Why is it still hurting? And Gabe said, well, he said 3 days. So give it another day. I waited that third day. And sure enough, it was exactly what he said. So can you explain a little bit about the radionics? Because that's something that that you know about.
Sure. So radionics, it's a machine that does produce frequencies, and these frequencies, it's not like a Rife machine. It's, these are, I would say they're totally different than a Rife machine in that the frequencies are, uh, they're on a higher plane, I guess. But people who run radionics, they because radionics is something that works with a consciousness, works with intention. And so the radionics machine to me is basically just a physical tool for a person's attention and intention to do the work. And so, your practitioner that used the radionics, he probably did muscle testing or
Yeah,
some form of kinesiology
he did
to
actually.
find, those answers. Yeah. So every person who does run a radionics machine, that knows how to use them well will have some form of muscle testing that they can do to get their answers, like on what frequency to use, how long to use it, and to find those root causes. So, I find that radionics is a fantastic thing because, like any physical tools, they are training wheels for consciousness, and that's what I call all of our rings too. I have a good buddy, Scott Miller. I call him the Master Alchemist. That does all of our crystal wraps for us. He has the Crystal Hotel, is his Facebook page. But he is very much in tune with, oh gosh, and here I go. I do apologize. I went down a big swirly rabbit hole and I forgot where I was going with all that. But
Well, we were on
yeah,
radionics and the frequencies of
so
intention.
yes, so he is the one who coined the term training wheels for ascension.
I love it.
Um, he's writing a book on that whole thing and just basically talking about all the physical tools are training wheels for our consciousness.
That's what
So
I
that
think.
way we
That's
have
what,
some.
yeah, definitely about the orgonite, the tensor rings. This is not the be all and end all. This is to help us get to who we are and where we always were.
Yes, because we might not be able to own a tool. You know, what I tell everybody about the Merkaba is the Merkaba is the only tool that we can actually own because it's always with our body. It is connected to this body, is the Merkaba field, that in our consciousness. So, um, and that's with the tensor rings as well. So these energetic templates that these tensor rings draw from, like the golden light rod, for instance, that is an energetic tool that gets anchored into the physical. Most of these things we can access without the physical tool. So again, going back to YouTube, there's a video called the Golden Light Rod Attunement, which gives you the attunement and the ability to use that golden light rod without having to have the physical tool, because your soul gets introduced to it, and it's your soul who actually is the one who uses that tool to clear the timelines and realities. So yeah, just going back to the conscious work.
Hmm. I went into South Dakota about 20 years ago, and I don't remember very much except for a pretty epic lightning storm. What's it like working in South Dakota?
Oh, it is beautiful. I live in a town of 164 people, and we don't have all the funny grids and all that stuff here. We live right in the Black Hills, and the Black Hills is full of sacred sites. I mean, I feel that we have just as many portal vortexes as Sedona, but they're just more spread out. Um, and the granite here is some of the oldest on the planet, the oldest surfaced rock on the planet. So this puts the Black Hills as the oldest mountain range on the planet. We have people who totally believe that this used to be like an Atlantean outpost here. It's a sacred ground.
Mm. I had a
So,
feeling. I had a feeling because your work is going to be done in a place that's very conducive to it.
yes, yes. Yeah, we couldn't have a shop downtown LA, I mean, we could, but we'd have to have a lot of nice bubbles around it for
Yeah, it
sure.
wouldn't be
But,
the same. I mean,
you
we
know,
left
Yeah, and your
LA.
rent would be absolutely
Oh yeah, I
outrageous.
don't even get into that.
oh,
We actually left LA because we needed somewhere, not just lower rent, but we needed a better place to do our work.
Calmer, more sane.
Yeah. And actually where we are is it doesn't have a lot of electromagnetic garbage either. Although they do put the towers on top of mountains, like Mount Pinos is a sacred site, and sure enough, a tower was put up there, which we neutralized with earth pipe and multiple tower busters. But I noticed that when we're down in Fraser Park, which is our local town, it's pretty small, not as small as where you are, but it's got a different feeling than anywhere else around. I mean, it's different than anywhere in Southern California. There's something about it. It's like stuck in time. It's like in
Perpetually 1995.
it's wonderful, and I think it's because there isn't as much of this electromagnetic pollution, and there's something about the land there that's just sustaining life. Although it's kind of dry and deserty, it still has life to it, and the people there are so, I don't know, real. That doesn't really say much, but they're human
Well, it's
beings.
not
They're
something you can really
yeah,
explain. It's just something that you sense.
but I mean, even a lot of small towns don't have that feeling, but it's genuine, and I think there's something about these kinds of places. So
yeah, and and that's it's back to that whole thing of, to me is local realities is that we don't have a lot of, we're pretty much just we don't have a lot of those overlays of different, local realities here. And that has to do with, the low number of people for one, yes. Um, but then it just has something to do too with the sacredness of the land for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, I
That
know.
sounds like the place that you're describing.
Yeah, that's what I think about South Dakota. I mean, I've only been through there once too, but there's something about that region it's very sacred, and I could feel it. And I'm interested in those old rock formations there and how they came to be, and what are these portals, and how do they become portals? It interests me.
And I could drink. I was 12 years old, and I could drink as long as my parents approved it,
That's pretty funny.
which they did, I guess,
I-
just to prove a point that I wouldn't like beer or vodka at 12 years old, which sure enough was the case. But,
Oh, and you can drive a car when you're 14, so that's yeah.
Interesting. So it's a little freer than some of the other states, I guess.
yeah.
And maybe that's because it's sacred.
Yeah, it still has its funny state governments, but we don't pay no attention to that stuff.
I know we don't either, actually. We're not really big on the whole voting thing, and we're not really big on the authoritarian, tyrannical government either. I don't think we even need to really concern ourselves with that because we're working on a different level at this point, and the government
Yeah.
is just there to kind of stop all this from
Well,
happening anyway.
a lot more people are working on that level, so that's it's just the thing of the two sides, one's going up, the other's going down. As more and more people opt out of that, they lose more and more power and influence. So it's
Oh yeah, part of that duality that we still need, to get everybody to say, okay, we don't want that. So yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's
that's a
interesting.
beautiful thing.
You mentioned duality a few times, and that is interesting because a lot of people are talking about getting away from duality now. And so it sounds like from what you're saying that we needed it, which is why we had it or still have it. So, can you talk a little bit more about the duality? Are we getting away from it? Is it something we need in order to grow?
and was it serving a higher and greater good, as you put it, in the past, and now it's not serving that anymore, and that's why it's sort of fading away now?
Well, yeah, because it's just coinciding with, everybody waking up, connecting, and knowing that there's something bigger than just what's here. Because, we're truly the Earth truly is on the leading edge of expansion of creation, and we traditionally, and we set this all up. I mean, that's the thing is you step back far enough from all this, and everything is perfect and divine. The duality was there for us to expand and grow. Because if you have something that you don't want, you're going to create something that you do want. And it's that whole yin yang of creation. And so, since we are beginning to become more in the heart and more connected to all that we are, we can expand creation for just the sake of expansion. We don't have to have duality to expand. Um, and that goes back to the sacred space of the heart, where, within the physical heart, there's the brain cells. That's where our consciousness resided before we were born. At some point in time, our consciousness, that little ball of light, moved up into the physical brain. And from that physical brain, it would see the world separate from us. And that was that duality. And so now then that our consciousness is going back into the heart, we can then be connected to everything. And so that's part of that, it is all part of the bigger process there. You know, all that is tied to the duality and moving out of that into creation for the sake of creation. Um, so, so yeah, we've always needed that stuff, to grow and to create, and
Do you have any
yeah, and
theories?
and that's
Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
oh, sorry, that's kind of what our tensor rings are doing. Is these higher frequency tools are drawing in both the perceived dark and the perceived light. It is bringing it both together and sending it back out as a higher vibration. So it's not, pushing away something that appears to be negative, because again, when you step back far enough, there's nothing really that is negative. Everything is divine. Everything is divine.
I'm starting to realize that too. And I was going to ask you if you have any theories on how we came here in these meat suits, because if we started out as divinity and much more advanced beings than we seem to be today, do you have any theories on how this happened based on the work you've done?
And how do vegans feel about being in a meat suit? It must be quite a quandary.
I know I'm a meatitarian. I connect more with plants, you know. Um, you know, I I really don't, because I mean there's so many theories out there, you know, like the Zacharias Sitchin work, and you
Yep.
know there's so much out there that gives a disempowering aspect to the look of the humans, and I haven't found any that I really resonate with. Um, so again, I just go back to the whole thing that we created this ourselves. That and for me, for the work that that I do and what I witness is that we have a soul family, and that soul family incarnates here with those soul contracts for growth and learning. And that's been a huge thing. I mean, your death, your spouse, your experiences, all that is pretty much set up before we step into this body with our soul family. And that again is just part of that growth and learning. And to me, it seems like we've gone through some pretty hellacious things in the name of growth and learning for the soul level. And that's where, like doing the 5D animator attunement, we're able to connect to our soul family and clear those contracts that no longer serve us. I mean, because we are totally walking in a different world now than what we were when we incarnated. So, I mean, we've seen people who have died, and when we look at them, um, they could have cleared that contract that they had with their family for their death because it was no longer serving them in the highest and best good for that to happen.
Hmm.
Because they could walk in a whole different world and didn't have to have the same soul growth and learning lessons.
It's very, very,
So,
very interesting to think about how we came here in that way because it's very much in line with the Buddhist idea that and actually Hindu idea too, that we choose these bodies, we choose our families. This is completely up to us.
mhm,
I think a lot,
yeah,
yeah,
there's no right.
I think a lot of people think that we're just sort of have no choice and we're just kind of thrown around and I'm
We're
starting to see,
subject to it. It's just happening to us,
yeah.
that kind of thing. And that is again, to go back to it, a word you said, Brian, just a very disempowering method of existence. And I see really not much truth to it, and not much benefit.
Hmm.
So yeah, it is us just creating. It is just us creating it for ourselves and for everyone else. And as people are realizing that, that's why things are getting better and better, and the false rulers are trying to make it appear that it's just getting worse and worse, which perhaps it is for
It
them,
is for them, for
but
sure.
for us it's going the complete opposite
Right.
direction.
Oh yeah, chaos is great because with chaos that means that things are being thrown up in the air and things are changing. It's yeah. So I see the world that's in chaos, and I think it is a fantastic thing.
I like it too
Um,
because
yeah.
it is change. We need that upheaval, and the fact is, it's chaos all the time anyway. I mean, I always say we're living in anarchy right now. We have been forever.
Mm-hmm.
If it seems like there's a government in charge, there really isn't. They just said they're in charge, and people believe it for some
They're
reason.
just a corporation, they're not a government,
And they
so
and some for some reason people do what they say. Even if it doesn't make any sense. So really, we all have free will, and we all are choosing this life. That's the way I see it. Well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
I
please
wanted
go
to,
ahead.
I wanted to ask you another technical question because I have one more technical question that I wanted to.
and only one.
No, seriously, because I like talking about these ideas that the tensor fields lead to. The last technical question I have about the tensor rings is in relation to this dream pendant. You sent us a couple of dream pendants, which I love, and I actually wear it a lot, and I keep it under my pillow when I sleep. and it's totally different than any of the other ones that we have. So it's not just a ring, but it's got like a this kind of spiraling coil, and it's got other pieces
It's
connected
kind
to
of
it.
going back in
And
on itself
I
again.
just I wanted to ask you about the energy fields that's creating and what it does, because I particularly love that pendant, and I like sleeping with it every night.
Oh, cool, cool. Yeah, because that one brings through, that brings through the energy of you. Actually, that coil on there, it creates that tube torus, that little infinity on the bottom of that coil. That infinity, it connects to the physical heart and the energetic heart. So basically, it is connecting that tube torus of that coil to the tube torus of the heart. That particular coil was made out of a cubit measure that was given to my sister. Um, my sister she's been very instrumental on the creation of this planet and as well as the expansion of creation. And we were given um, this ring that had never been used on the planet before on the creation of megalithic structures or geomancy or anything, but it was used in the creation of the earth. Now, this particular coil that you have that comes from that, it is connecting the heart, the mind, the soul, and the oversoul. So it is basically taking that coil and connecting that to the heart, then the mind, the soul, and the oversoul, and then that little fire ring on the top of it. And that fire that we see within that is the crystal sun of the earth, the central sun, and the soul fire. And that fire ring is going through that channel and just clearing the static.
Mm.
So that's one of the tools. And the reason it's called the Dream Pendant is because that was named after our good friend Mark Peebler, Dr. Dream, um, because he, I don't know, somehow it got put together that way for him one time. And that name just stuck there, the Dream Pendant, named
Mm.
after Dr. Dream. And he's from California. He does all the Tibetan bowls and the galactivations and such. But that coil, it opens that connection from the heart, mind, soul, the oversoul, and it allows the mind to catch on to a lot of what is going on there. And
Wow.
as that widens that connection, it holds it open. So you only need to wear it. For me, I wore that pendant for 3 weeks, and then I didn't need it anymore. And I thought my connection was already open, but holy shift did that open that connection a lot more.
It's amazing. Well, that must explain why I like it so much, especially when I'm sleeping. And I like how these tensor rings are helping us access these parts of ourselves that have always been there, just kind of realigning everything. I really appreciate that it's personal, that it's each one of us in our own energy that this is working with. It's really great. I tend to wear the balance and harmony ring all the time, and the other rings I'll use one sometimes, I'll use another other times. The 333 megahertz one helped me a lot with the sounds. Now I'm able to communicate with other entities that I couldn't before, and more effectively too, because before I was just telling them to shut up all the time because I didn't understand what was happening. So that took a lot of growth for me. I needed someone to point it out to me, by the way, and I will actually plug a friend right now and her beautiful work, and that's Michelle Reimers, who we had on our show, who does Akashic record readings. And when we had interviewed her, I hadn't yet had my own Akashic reading. I just wanted to know what they were, and so everybody got to find out along with me what they were. And her website is akashicrecordreading.org. She helped me immensely, and she actually was the one that pointed out to me what was actually going on with my ear.
And that's spelled AKASHIC.
Yes, akashicrecordreading.org. So once I learned that I was being communicated with, that changed everything for me. And I think that the tensor fields, that's something to do with helping me to access that communication, especially because it's sound related. And I was using the sound healing ring with that. So,
And it comes full circle once again. All of these are tools that we use, be the orgone energy, the tensor rings, Akashic record reading, opening up the record books. These are all tools for us to access things that are in varying stages of dormancy. And when we can reactivate them, that's when the full nature of human potential really comes through. And again, as more people start to do this, it's shifting the reality of the entire planet and the global consciousness. And it is truly a spectacular thing to be part of. I'm very grateful to be alive at a time like this and have access to these kinds of tools and to be doing this kind of work. And I'm sure you feel the same way, Brian, and we appreciate that you were able to come on our show for a second time and talk about the Tensor technologies. It is absolutely amazing, and I'll say one more time, twistedsage.com is your website, and you'll be updating this pretty frequently in the next few days, right?
Yeah, we're getting ready to. Yeah, we're going through so much expansion and growth with the business and with what we're doing for energy work. That yeah, we'll definitely be doing a lot of updating.
Well, it's always good to retouch on these subjects because, again, they're all interrelated and they all help us when we need it. And even the quick fix people can get some use out
I
of it.
recommend that everybody goes to twistedsage.com and checks out the Tensor rings, and you could take care of a lot of your energetic problems that way. The smart meter ring is a great option.
Yep.
If you can't get rid of your smart meter, that is a great way to deal with it, and we found it helped a lot with the neighbor smart meter.
And please come to our website, thechembo.com. That's THECHEMBOW.com. Our YouTube channel is up, youtube.com/thehumanfrequency. We actually have a URL now.
Oh yeah, and we got a couple of events coming up, so check out the website. We're going to be doing a talk up in Big Bear, California on October 30th, and then we'll be in Portland, Oregon on November 12th. So I'll have more information on these talks coming up, but for now you can check out the website.
And if you have any questions, you can always email me, blueskies@thechembo.com. And I'm looking forward to these two events because more info, more awareness. It's just another step in the process. Brian, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it.
Oh, thank you guys very much. Yeah, it was a pleasure, indeed.
Well, we know you're super busy, so thanks again.
You've been listening to The Human Frequency on American Freedom Radio. Please tune in next week. Thank you and good night.